was in Germany from 97 to 99. That's 1997, 1999.
Absolute Guard podcast.
This is episode 30. My name is Benny, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host John, who I think would agree one of the loves of his life is Street Fighter and fighting games.
Yes, I would agree with that. I've definitely been feeling like Street Fighter's been super important to me lately. I think it got me through the pandemic too. Like being trapped inside, so just having to get really good and grind online. That was it. I was glad I had it for that.
Yeah, and our parents always said those video games will do you no good, right?
Yeah, that's true. They've become a huge form of entertainment. Yeah.
Yep.
Is Street Fighter one of your loves too, Benny?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Yeah, I mean, just from the competitive aspect and playing the games itself, like just being a big video game nerd, and then also like just from the friendships I've made, here from when I started back in Alaska, then here in AZ and everything else, and people I've met all around the world. So
very cool. We should ask that question to our guest too. Who's our guest today?
Today we got Scott on again.
What's up,
How's it going, Scott?
What's going on? I just played Madden.
That's where your true love lied.
Oh no,
all Madden.
I've never been a Madden guy. Even when I used to play football games back in the day, I was playing like the Joe Montana games on Sega Genesis with my dad.
I was always partial to NFL Blitz. I didn't really care about.
Oh yeah! Oh hell yeah!
Yeah, Blitz is great, man. I think anybody can get it. Gets
TK. NFL 2K. I've never been a Madden guy. I just figured it'd be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing good.
Very
nice,
cool.
nice.
Yeah.
So, what were we going to talk about today, John?
So, a couple weeks back, I went to Hawaii, and I had been to Hawaii, I want to say in 2013 or 2012, somewhere around then. And I had played in a Marvel tournament there and kind of like gotten to know the Hawaii fighting game community, or at least the Marvel side. 10 years later, or over 10 years later, I think I'm, I was there for vacation this time, and I decided to try to reconnect with them. And granted, the scene had changed quite a bit, and as things would happen in 10 years, but it got me thinking a lot about inter-scene relations, like how me and my buddy basically represented Arizona to the Honolulu scene, and we got a taste of Hawaii's strongest players, and I got to catch up on all the different things that had happened since I had last been there. And I know that our scene has had sibling scenes as well, and I just kind of wanted to talk through that, as well as like what your guys' experiences were with sister scenes.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a great topic to talk about. I mean, we got the OG here who was playing back in the arcades and had to travel, state to state.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a little younger than that, but I was just like, even then, like, I couldn't. That's not something that I was able to do. But so yeah, we got a couple different perspectives here that I think would be really good.
Yeah. So I mean, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, because I had the experience of I was in the military too, so I lived in a couple different scenes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because Germany and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you play any games over there too?
So I was in Germany from 97 to 99. That's 1997, 1999.
It's pre-World War I.
This is the 20th century, pre-Y2K. Google if you don't know what that is. But yeah, I was over there for those 2 years. I was in Mannheim, Käfertal, and I didn't really have much of a scene over there. Um, internet was still new,
Yeah.
and the internet was really expensive over there at the time.
Okay.
So I didn't really spend a whole lot of time on the internet, so it was kind of hard to figure out. Plus, I'm in a country where I don't know the language.
Yeah.
It was really difficult to find anything out there. I never really did ultimately, but there was a bowling alley on Post that had Tekken 3 when it was still like pretty new.
Okay.
And that's when I actually got into Tekken 3 because I was like, well, I want to play some fighting games. I'm like starving for it. So I just
Yeah.
started going there, playing. There'd be random people that come up and play. They're all like terrible.
Hmm.
But I would actually just go over there and play all the time. I'd actually run into a couple of people that were also in the military that just because these were just like uh family members that would be there, like not actual military, like they would
Oh,
be with
okay.
their spouses or kids or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
keep in mind, I was only 18 at the time. And I eventually run into some actual military guys that actually did play.
Okay.
And, I was still kind of getting my feet wet with Tekken. And I really got into it because King's multi grabs, they were so
Okay.
amazing. And that's what really got me into it. And I'm like, oh, I just want to do these multi grabs. They're freaking amazing. And I learned how to do them and all that. And then it just kind of went from there. But then I found a couple guys. I remember one guy in particular, his name was Mark. Luckily, he ended up staying at the barracks literally right across from me. So that worked out really well. He was a huge fan. And we didn't really build much of a scene there or anything, but I was able to find like a little group of buddies, and it grew from there. I eventually got a Dreamcast. We were playing like Soul Calibur 1.
Oh, wow.
It was so during the 97, 99 era, I was really just playing 3D games.
Okay.
Okay.
Like even Alpha 3, my favorite game of all time, was at the time I was not playing it.
Huh.
I had not been exposed to the game yet.
Okay. That's fair enough. So,
So
like,
so yeah, we would just do that. And just play 3D fighting games all the time. And then I had a Saturn at the time, so he would dabble with some of those games that he had never played before because he'd been in Germany for so long, he hadn't seen it and stuff. So I like introduced him like X Men vs Street Fighter and stuff, Alpha 2 and stuff like that. And yeah, that was how I got my fix when I was in
Yeah.
Germany.
okay.
Okay.
That's
So
how
yeah.
it started. And then but
You didn't really have to deal with like a language barrier or anything either, then, because it was all
no,
service
it was all
members.
English. I never ran into anyone that was German because there were some game stores that I found throughout Germany that I frequented that I had to go to get imports,
Okay.
which in my case, American games,
Yeah.
because the PX on Post, they just didn't carry all the newest stuff, and it was super frustrating. But I had to pay premiums for that. I remember buying like Ocarina of Time for like $120 brand new. It was
Oh
ridiculous.
man.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean that was like the furthest. I remember a couple game stores when Tekken 3 was coming out on PlayStation. I'd run into a couple of them, but they were super casual, and I just never saw them again. That was
Okay.
Okay.
like the extent of my German experience. I was really bummed that I never found like arcades. I know they were
Yeah.
there. I just didn't know where to go. I didn't really know how to find it. I did know some German people, but they're all female.
Oh, okay.
And they weren't into that stuff, so they had no idea. So I, I,
Okay.
I really didn't experience too much of it until I left there and I went to North Carolina,
Huh.
and then that was a big scene.
Okay. So like so you were transferred to North Carolina due to the military, and then
Yeah, so right at the end of '99, right at the start of 2000, I went there, and then I found a scene very fast.
Okay.
okay.
Was that just kind of a matter of like you just went to the arcade and like you just found some people there, or was it
Uh,
like some other communication that you
Straight
guys
up,
did?
you know what? Let me backtrack a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I
Before I
was gonna
went
say
to
too.
Germany, before I went to Germany, I was in training, right? I did boot camp in South Carolina, and I went to AIT, which is our school, to
Hmm.
learn about our job, right?
Okay.
So that was in Augusta, Georgia. I was there for like 3 months, and there was a mall there that had a Tilt. I think it's a Tilt arcade, and I did find a scene there. I wasn't there long, but I remember Tekken 3 was pretty hot there. There was a couple guys that played X vs Street Fighter that I would get into it regularly for a little bit. We would be at each other's throats because we'd just be doing such bull crap to each other because I gave us full crap. But Tekken 3 was really popular, and they had Mortal Kombat 4. Mortal Kombat 4 was just coming out.
Okay.
They did this thing where like cabinets would show up at arcades, but there'd be nothing in it.
Oh,
there's no board.
Oh,
like
It
okay.
was like a pre-advert. Yeah, it was like in preparation, like to let people know, like, hey, this game's gonna be here. The cabinet's here. It just doesn't have a board yet. So we knew it was coming.
Though. Like, that's kind of hype. Like you walk in, and you're just like, oh man, what is this? Street Fighter 6? Like, oh, I didn't even know there was a new one coming out.
So there's that big MK4 machine with the huge, the meme-worthy Quan Chi stare down on the side of the cabinet with a big white face. That's like that's making its rounds on the internet right now. It was cool. You come in and like, oh sweet, they are going to get it, So that was always pretty cool. And then like and then when Mortal Kombat 4 came out, man, a lot of people came out for that. And I was like super heavy into MK4 right then and there. But then I was away for 3 months. And then I went to Germany and then that all went away. But fast forward to 2000, 2001, I went to North Carolina, and that was an amazing scene.
Yeah, when you say a lot of people, like how many are we talking? Like double digits, like 10 to 20?
I was stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and the town that sits right outside Fort Bragg is Fayetteville. And I want to say it was another mall. I just went to. That's like the quickest way to find an arcade. It was like, where's the nearest mall? And then you go from there, right?
Okay.
I found the mall, and everybody there. I would find a group of people, and they were all heavy into Tekken Tag. Like Tekken Tag was like the game to play out there. They had a Third Strike. No one played it because no one played Third Strike then. There was like one guy that played it, and he would get XSF, Master Street Fighter ranking every time against the computer.
Oh,
but no one ever played. But no one ever played the game except for him. So he was like all by himself. But there'd be like a little group playing like Marvel 1 at the time because Marvel 1 was the current Marvel game. But Tekken Tag, dude, everyone played that. And I would go there on a Friday night, Saturday night. There'd be at least 10, 12 people just playing tag and maybe a couple others. And then
that's pretty healthy, yeah.
So I would go there, and then there was a guy that worked there. He always gave out free credits to everybody. I never had to pay. Even though I didn't know these guys. I didn't know these guys. I always wanted to put my token. He's like, don't worry about it. I'm like, I didn't feel right about it, but I did anyway. But anyway, it took me like a few weeks to like really like, to get into like this circle and befriend them, because I guess what they would do is after the arcade closed at 9, they all went to one of these other guys' house, my friend, this guy Danny, and they all went there and played games until like 8 a.m. in the morning.
Oh wow, okay. So it was just kind of like starting the night.
So at first I couldn't go because I wasn't cool with them yet. It took like a few weeks to like a month of like going there like every couple days, and then be becoming a regular and show them like, oh, okay, this guy's pretty good. And they started inviting me out. And I mean, dude, sometimes there'd be like 20, 30 people in that place.
Oh, wow.
We bring out consoles. We would just bring PlayStations over there and just play whatever. And then I was the only one that had mass sticks. Everyone's like, what are these?
Yeah, you said that was early, like 2000s, right?
2000, 2001.
Okay.
CVS 1 and Marvel 2 had not come out yet when I got there.
Yeah. So like prior to going to North Carolina, like, so it was, like you said, it was just a matter of just going to the arcade. Like there wasn't any kind of forum groups or anything like that at that time that you would like reach out to.
SRK Shuriken.com was just starting. It started after it, like really the website went public after I got there. It was in 2000.
Oh wow.
Okay. So I had met these guys before that had ever become a thing. So it was just a matter of organically finding these guys, and then learning, and then getting to know everybody, and then that's also when I really started getting into Alpha 3, because there was a dedicated Alpha 3 scene there, and I learned that there was other arcades there. There was an arcade called Fun. That was the name of it, and it was a pretty decent sized arcade too. Think of it like almost like a Chuck E. Cheese type place.
Okay.
and they had like some other good stuff. So they had like Alpha 3, they had Third Strike also, which is funny because I'd never seen Third Strike in an arcade before, so I went there, and because we didn't have them in Arizona, and they had like Marvel vs. Street Fighter, they had whatever, and so we would go play Tekken Tag at the mall. But then when I wanted to go hang with the Alpha 3 guys and play with those guys, I got really close to them. We go play over there, play Alpha 3. And then I learned a guy had an Alpha 3 cabinet in his garage. And then we started going over there all the time. And yeah, it was awesome, dude. The North Carolina scene is so awesome. Jimbo is actually part of that scene.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah,
I was gonna ask, like, do you still keep in contact with them today?
Unfortunately, he came to the scene after I left.
Okay.
So, but we know the same people. But I mean, me and Jimbo were like super cool. But yeah, unfortunately, I didn't meet him when I was there. He wasn't really in the scene yet. We had a couple people that were in the scene that made it to Tekken Nationals during Tekken Tag. Like, we had some really good players. One of my best buds from there, Kevin Michaels. He's such a good freaking Street Fighter player, but never travels. He's one of those guys that are like, that guy helped me get back into Street Fighter shape because I wasn't playing Street Fighter anymore.
Yeah.
I had stopped playing Street Fighter back in &93. I was playing MK, KI, Tekken, and all the other stuff. I wasn't playing Street Fighter. And going back there, those him and the Alpha guys got me back into playing Street Fighter again. And they kicked my ass into shape.
Okay. Yeah, so like back in that time, like obviously, I mean, it might seem a little obvious, but I mean, with no forums and stuff like that, like how were things kind of organized? Was it just like the host like reaching out to everybody, like calling everybody and be like, hey man, we're gonna do this, or did you guys have like a regular like days to meet up?
You just showed up Friday night and Saturday night. That was it.
Just showed up at the arcade or at his
showed
house?
Up at the arcade. No, we always showed up at the arcade
first, yeah.
And then we all head out to their place after, because the arcade closed at like 9 or 10.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and then when Marvel 2 came out, boy, there was a lot of people that started showing up. And then, of course, I had it on Dreamcast. We were getting on Dreamcast because it came out import Dreamcast at the same time we got the arcade version.
Okay.
But man, that blew up, dude. There was like, everyone was like, when Marvel 2 came out, like the big cities like New York and especially SoCal, they hated that game. They went back to Marvel 1. We embraced Marvel 2, yeah, because it was so different. Only 4 attack buttons. What's that?
That makes sense.
Like with some of the stupid music, and stuff like that. And also, to also put that, to also say is that we were near Charlotte, and Charlotte was one of the test sites for location testing for Capcom.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So we got to try. We were playing Marvel 2 before it came out. We had discovered like how stupid like Cable was in day 1. We had discovered all that stuff, and
did
so
that was change awesome. in between your load tests and the final release? Anything change?
No, Cable especially. We were doing triple hyper Viper beams on day 1, dude. We're like, this is ridiculous. But just jump back, gunshot, throw grenades. The strats that you see with Cable, if you load up videos today, is the same strats we did before the game even came out. It's just it's just obviously much tighter, but the general strategy was discovered that first day. It was so obvious.
That it was so obvious. Relevant. Yeah,
it's so obvious. His strategy was so obvious. But yeah, Marvel 2 was like really huge. That was a fun time. That was really fun. Then obviously CVS 1 came out. That was fun. So that was cool that I was at least back in the States when like the last set of like new games were hitting before the Dark Ages started.
Right.
I missed that scene. North Carolina scene was awesome.
With the Marvel 2 scene, like you said, that things kind of blew up from there, and then like, so where were you hearing about the other scenes like New York and SoCal at that time? Like where were you hearing about like their opinions and stuff?
I already knew about those scenes before then because I was a part of alt.games.sf2 news groups back in the mid 90s.
Okay, so the news groups. Okay.
Yeah. But even then, it was I only lurked in there because at the time when I was a part of it, I was too young. I couldn't travel anywhere. I had heard of B3. I couldn't go to those things. I was only like 15, 16, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, could I have gone? Maybe, but I didn't know anyone else going, and I wasn't going to
Yeah.
risk it. I wasn't going to risk going. And plus, I wasn't playing Street Fighter at the time.
I gotcha.
I wasn't playing it. I mean, I was playing everything else. So I just lurked. And so I already knew about all those scenes. And then at the time, I was really big on, I was really hooked on IRC, on Channel Capcom, on EFNet IRC. That's where like the original Illuminati lurked.
Okay.
And so all the new stuff that you would hear always came through that channel before it leaked out to the forums and all that stuff. We had, so like, because all the big names were in there, like Vaya was in there, Choi, you know, all the big names, Arturo, Ricky Ortiz, everyone, James Chan, we were all in there. We were all in there. Mike Watson, we were all sharing tech in there. Even like when tournaments would happen, like someone like Flo or Martin would be at a tournament and they'd be on their phone. And keep in mind, this is like 2001, 2002. They had phones where they could actually log into IRC.
Oh, wow.
And they were giving us like play-by-play in the chats of like what's going on.
That's pretty
the
cool.
only way we do.
Like before streaming, right?
Yeah.
You're like reading the text.
Yeah, they were like our live stenographers.
Like they're sketching a picture of the tournament. This is when John Choi went alpha.
And then I learned of a couple more North Carolina players in Channel Capcom when I was in North Carolina, and then we'd meet up with them in another city and go to their local place.
Okay.
And all that. Yeah, it was cool, man.
Do you still keep in contact with some of the North Carolina scene today? Okay.
Like I said, my buddy Kevin Michael, sometimes he comes on to Fightcade and plays with an Alpha 3. We used to go even, but now he can't touch me because it's just different now. He's when by the time I left, he just had a newborn kid. It's so crazy because by the time I left, his daughter was not even a year old yet. Now she's already graduated high school and she's like in college. Oh my God!
So he's got a lot of more free time now. Then it sounds like.
Yeah, but it was super cool. I love that scene. That was like my second home, and I owe a lot to them. I think if it wasn't for them, I might have been out of Street Fighter forever at that point. Who knows?
Yeah, like you might have just stopped playing games, like fighting games, or you talked about.
I honestly, I don't know, because I was in danger. Like when I was in Germany, even though I found a couple guys, I was not playing that much.
Yeah.
You know, because it was just weird. Like I didn't have an arcade to go to. Okay. You know, and that was really foreign to me.
There is something to be said about the motivation that it gives you when you have competition, specifically like when you travel to another place and then you haven't played anybody there before, so everybody's potential good competition, you know, and you get to
exciting.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
It's like a weird way to feel motivated, I guess, where I just like suddenly I'm like I can play everybody here and show off or learn a lot or something and find out how good like I want to see where I land in this room, right?
You're just exploring, right? And I remember when Alpha 3 came out PS1 when I was in Germany. I heard so much hype about it. I played it and I was like, because no one would play with me. So I was like, I don't want to play it then. So I didn't.
And you said no one would play with you like because of skill? Like they didn't want to lose?
No, it's
or just because they didn't like it?
You gotta understand this is the late 90s. 2D was frowned upon. It was old and outdated, you know, it was all about 3D. Because I tell you what, when I got Soul Calibur 1 on my import Dreamcast, this is before Dreamcast came out in the US. In my barracks, dude, my barracks room was full of people. It was full. People wanted to play that game just because of the way it looked.
Okay.
When that game came out, nothing looked like that game. Nothing. There was nothing on the planet that looked as good as that game. And then people were just flocking to my room wanting to play. And I had all these people to play. It was great. It was great. Whether they were good or not didn't matter. It was just fun to play people.
Yeah.
You know,
I wonder if we'll ever have a fighting game launch like that again that attracts enough casuals in like walkable space.
Yeah.
Like we might have a big retail release here nowadays, like with Tekken 8 or Street Fighter 6, but I don't think it's going to appeal to the mass public because we just don't
Yeah,
congregate like that anymore. I guess in a military barracks that still happens, obviously, but
yeah,
like
And even
arcades,
then, we've kind of already seen everything.
yeah.
Nothing doesn't. There's not really much that surprises us anymore. We don't get much of a wow factor anymore. And then on
Yeah,
top of
that's what I
that,
was gonna say. Yeah,
the internet spoils everything. You already know
yeah,
about it well in advance.
yeah. That's
You
true. Yeah,
know, whereas like when I got that game, people were like, "What is this? I've never
yeah,
seen this before." Because the
yeah,
internet wasn't huge at the time.
yeah,
You know, it's like
yeah.
yeah.
it's like the Metal Gear Solid 2 syndrome, right?
Oh, like we need tinkering with
Imagine if that game.
expectations.
Imagine if that game came out in this age. I
Oh,
mean,
we're
Kojima's pretty good about keeping secrets, but that could have got leaked, and that would have ruined the whole surprise of that game,
like Raiden
right?
being the secret
Hmm.
protagonist and the
Yeah, who
box
would have known
having
that
Snake on it and stuff.
you were gonna do naked flips while holding your nuts? Who knew you were gonna do that? Who knew?
No.
Who knew, right? Whether you liked it or not, that was a hell of a surprise. And it's stuff like that you don't get anymore, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think that's ever gonna happen again.
Yeah, because I mean, you got to think too. Like I mean, when it comes to people like congregating at like a casual event kind of thing, right? It's usually reserved more for like console launches and that kind of thing. You don't really see that for game releases. Like people going out for game releases are, I mean, one, I don't think that's very often now, especially with the digital age.
Digital. Mhm.
Yeah, with physical, like yeah, like I think a few months ago I posted a picture of me like at a Call of Duty, midnight release, and I'm just like, man, this is so long ago, and like nowadays I'd be like, nah, I'm just gonna order it digital and I'll have it
It's a waste of
pre-downloaded
time.
beforehand, and I'll be ready to play at midnight. Like I don't have to go somewhere and then drive back and then
And then wait
download
in a
an update.
line and wait in a
Yeah,
line and then hope
yep,
that they got enough copies.
yeah. Oh, that's it.
Yeah, I don't. I think for Street Fighter 4, like Vanilla 4, I don't think I even did like a midnight release or anything. I just uh, bought it,
No,
but then
not for vanilla. Yeah,
every
I
subsequent
remember,
fighting game was like, hey, I'm gonna like be camped out at midnight, making sure I get it, or in the most recent age, just download it right away. As soon as it becomes available.
yeah. No,
Um,
I did a midnight release for Super. I remember that one at our local play and trade, and like I think somebody had like the leaked copy, like I don't know, 2 or 3 days beforehand, and I ended up going over there and playing a little bit, and then like, yeah, that was one of my fondest memories of Street Fighter was going to the midnight release, and like I think I had like a 26 game win streak, like nobody could beat me, and I was just like, who's next? Who's next?
yep, Super
oh yeah,
Honda,
man.
man.
Yeah,
But
uh,
yeah, man. Yeah, Tuesday, man. I love going to North Carolina. I wish I had gone back. I would love to go back there and just like see everybody. It's just cool, man, because it's like you build like another family.
yeah.
yeah,
And it's so cool. Love it.
So yeah, like with my first Hawaii trip, if I get out of the floor and kind of go through what that memory
yeah,
was like, but um, I was still a part of like Team Hazmat at that point, and so my work just happened to be sending me to Hawaii to work on a project there, and so uh, Hasm actually like had a connection with the Hawaii guys. I can't remember exactly how he did, but I think a lot of them were big fans of the Team Hazmat stream. So he got me in connection with some of the Marvel specific TOs there, and I remember one of the main figureheads of the scene like had a high rise apartment in Honolulu. So I got to like leave my
yeah.
tourist bubble or my like because that was on Waikiki Beach then, so it was like a tourist beach bubble, and I didn't actually get to go and see the real Hawaii. And
Hmm.
I went to his like high rise apartment, and they just had a bunch of games. I played Cross Tekken. I showed them like my Marvel stuff, and I ended up doing pretty well there because that was also like a big like measuring stick moment where it was like, who's better right now. Like they sent over because when I wasn't the best in Arizona, I was just like one of the higher placers. I think like a
Hmm.
consistent top eighter would probably be a better way to put me. And So they just wanted to see how they measured up against me, and I got to play some of their best. But then I found that throughout the trip, I would uh, encounter more and more different players at different venues, like kind of like how Arizona had a bunch of different tournament organizers throughout the valley running different events. Honolulu was the same, where there was like a Marvel focused venue. They had like a dance club, which I found incredibly fascinating, where it was like a dance club that also had setups at it. And this was in 2013, so to me that was kind of groundbreaking at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They had a bowling alley that had an old school arcade in it, but they also had a machine that had an Xbox in it and just charged for time usage. So that was kind of cool, and a lot of people played there, called Leeward Bowl.
Nice.
Yeah, it was there. I got to try my first bowl of poke ever too. That was before poke made it big here in Arizona.
Oh, you hipster.
Yeah, there's a grocery store. Like the best poke is you go to a grocery store and get because they get it at the fresh market, you know. And then I eventually entered a bunch of their tournaments too. And my Hawaii trip was interesting, where my company flew me out there. I completed the project, and then we flew back, and then they flew me out a week later because they needed me to do something else. So I got to go and enter 2 different tournaments. And I think during that time they even took me out to like a local restaurant that was like, I don't even remember a ton about the food. I just remember it being like a bunch of different things, and like they all mix their food there. That's the big thing, is like all the different dishes they have, they're all mixed. They just take like they'll serve it family style and then just pour steak sauce on top of it or something, from a different dish and whatnot.
But that's what's cool about when you go to these other scenes, and then they bring you in and you get to see what their like little mini cultures like, right?
Yeah.
The things that they do that's different from what you're doing at your place. Even if it's another city, it's like, just how do they operate? What do they do when, like in my case, like when the arcade closes? What do you guys do afterwards? What do you guys do for fun and stuff like that? And then they take you, because you're the guest, like, hey, we're going to show you what we do and how we do things. And that's awesome. I love that part. I love it.
Yeah, like I think it was after bowling alley night when the arcade closed, and so we went to a Hawaiian breakfast chain that's really prevalent on the island, and I was like, "This is our Denny's," and then they immediately told me that Denny's is trash, and then I figures that only the mainlanders would go to Denny's.
You totally insulted them.
Yeah, I did. But that's the thing, right? Is like when you go to any new place, like you said, there's you run the risk of just being stuck in a tourist bubble unless you have an in with the locals, and being part of the fighting game community is basically your ticket to that, because you can be like, let's bond over fighting games, and then, by the way, can you teach me some pigeon? Or like you hook me up with some of that food.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I love it. Just bonding and like learning all these new people, like a huge group of people you've never met before. And it's such a good feeling too, because you guys already have a common bond, right?
Yep.
And it makes it really easy to get to know them and all that, and just learning. It's such a good feeling. It's like it's the same thing when you have out of towners come to your place, right? And that was like during the 2000s, that was huge, like a big, like for like the longest time, like say like during Devastations or like some of the big events that I ran in the mid 2000s at Castles and Coasters, big thing was Vegas. They always came out supporting us to the fullest. So like guys like Ruin and stuff, a lot of these guys, Xenotype, all these guys, they're mostly Guilty Gear Marvel guys, but they played everything, and they would show up to everything, and they'd always come hang out with us. And it was just so cool to have all this. It was like a second family, right? Yeah. And then eventually, like we get a group of Californians that come out. So like, guys like Watson, Vi, Combo Fiend and stuff would start coming out here, and then we'd start getting the El Paso guys coming out here, and then you get to learn that group of people and all that. And it was so cool. Like, it's so cool when you have like people like coming to your home turf, and then you can show them stuff, like, hey, this is where we go. This is what we do. This is our spot right here. This is how we do stuff. And it's always cool.
We had, in the Marvel scene, there's a pretty known traveler named Kane Blue River. He's a champion, and he's from Chile, but he basically flew up to, I forget where his starting point was in America, but he basically just traveled all across the country
for the whole year until Evo, right?
Yeah, and then one year he came to Arizona, and it was actually, he came to San Diego, and I happened to be in San Diego at the time, which is another kind of sister scene for us. Is the San Diego scene. They hosted Marvel, and then me, Armando, Sean, and Mike Prosick all went on a trip there. Dana too. I think we went on a trip and played Marvel and Street Fighter 4 with them. Yeah, sorry. All that to say is what was my point? Oh yeah, Vegas is like a multi-generational thing too, because there was a Marvel Vegas scene as well that has a lot of connections here with our local Marvel Arizona scene. And it's interesting seeing like the different ways people react, and then like to an invader, or because like in Honolulu, like I would there were the people that really wanted to beat me because like those rivalries developed, and they wanted to measure up against me, and they wanted to prove that Hawaii was better than Arizona.
Pride. It's pride.
Right, there's pride, but then there was also like another group of people that like they didn't necessarily want to play with me. They just wanted, like, they were fans of the Team Hazmat brand, and like they had seen me on stream and stuff. So there was a little bit of that too, where it's like people were either really welcoming out of the gates or like competitively welcoming. And then after after we were done like playing in the tournaments and whatnot, that's when we would go to the Hawaiian Denny's, and all that competitive facade would flip.
Yeah, all
away,
that stuff, all
right?
that stuff gets turned on because you don't want to, when the games are off, the switch turns off, and then
becomes
absolutely.
like a big social experience more than anything else. It's
But
really cool.
It's the same thing for us. Like every time whenever the outsiders came in, and we had to make sure we had to put on our A game. We had to try to defend our turf. There was a lot of pride there, right? Yeah. And it's like you said, it's a measuring stick. And like, this means a lot to us if we could beat these guys, if we can stop them from getting first.
Yeah,
especially when California came, because that's the ultimate measuring stick, right?
Right.
That's like the impossible wall to get over, especially at the time, because we didn't have online and all that stuff. We didn't have all these tools, and beating California was just like the ultimate goal.
That's the unique part about being Arizona, right? Is that we're next to one of the hot spots for fighting games in the country, but then you also have like Nevada and Utah and New Mexico and Texas and up north Washington, right? Like,
but I would argue that the East Coast has that advantage in spades because they're so close to each other.
Yeah,
you have like Connecticut, you have NYC, you have Philly, you have the Baltimore, like the Maryland guys. They are so close to each other. They're way closer to each other than we are to like California, to like SoCal or Vegas. Like Philly to New York was like less than an hour drive.
Yeah, but they don't have
the Jersey guys.
Their majors in Florida. Right? now that I think about it.
Well, not back then. But I'm just saying, you had a whole crew of people in all those. You had scenes there, and every scene. Okay. Yeah. You had multiple scenes that were really close together, and they all had top players that would place well at Evos. You'd have obviously your usual New York guys at the time was Justin and Sanford and all that. And then you had like Philly, you had Demon Ohio, you had Steve Harrison from Maryland, I think it was. Just a bunch of guys, a bunch of really huge names. They were really close together. And I think the East, you see it online too. Like if you ever look online, like look at the Street Fighter 5 map, right? They're much closer. There's way more people online on the East Coast than there is on the West Coast because there's so many more of them.
I didn't think about that because we always get like a skewed representation of what East Coast population looks like. Because not all of them make it out to Evo, right? Versus us, we can just make a 4-hour drive.
You just look at it from a population standpoint. You just look at the map population. Look at a map based on population. Obviously, the East Coast is far more populated than the western part of the United States. I feel that whenever I play on Fightcade, it just seems like every time an American's on, they're always on the East Coast. It's rarely anyone on the West Coast. Huh. And I've always felt that when I play games online. It's like, man, it's always East Coast people. Always. They just have there's just a lot more communities over there. We're a little more, we have a lot over here, but we're really spread out. Yeah. Even though we're close. Because our states are so huge.
Yeah.
That's another point I wanted to make too, is that
cross-pollination. That was the word I was looking for. There's a lot more cross-pollination going on over there.
I was thinking about cross pollination too, but more on a game by game sense. Where earlier you mentioned in the North Carolina story that you guys kind of all got in a house together and just played whatever. So I imagine whatever setup was open.
We just played anything. We played
Right.
everything.
Yeah, and I noticed that one in my the story I just told was about my first trip to Hawaii, but my most recent trip to Hawaii, my interaction with the FGC was much smaller because it was more of a vacation than anything else. But we went to a house party that happened to be going that time, and it was a potluck, and so I got to try all kinds of different foods. Like they just had scallops just laying out there, like I'm just like to an Arizona, and it's like that shit's expensive. Like, but they just had like a bunch of scallops just like sitting on shells that you could just eat. Anyway,
Okay.
yeah, I left. The food was really good. All that to say though, is that every setup, like there were a bunch of different games. Like Marvel 3 was there, and I got to get in touch with my old Marvel 3 player self. But they had like Tekken. I think it was Tekken 3, and then they had Street Fighter 4, 2, 3, 5, other Street Fighter games. Like they just had everything, and I noticed
it's a hodgepodge.
Yeah, and I noticed that everybody seemed to play everything. So at that time, everybody had been picking up Marvel just because, like they felt like they liked the game, wanted to revisit it, and it had been growing on Parsec, and so the community kind of, rather than focus on one specific game, they just kind of shift from game to game as kind of a whole group of friends.
They're being a jack of all trades right now.
Yeah.
They like fighting games so much they want to try them all.
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot with the smaller scenes. So the scenes that aren't California or East Coast New York or Texas even.
Right, because if they're playing only one game, there might not be enough people that are interested in that one game, and then they end up killing themselves off. So they have to learn to play all the games to keep the games supported and sufficient with numbers. Exactly. And that's how it was for us. That's how it was for us in the Dark Ages. We had to play everything.
Yeah,
everyone played everything.
When you were playing your 3D phase, right? It was because like there wasn't any 2D games to play, so you had to play whatever was in front of you.
I had to adapt, and then I learned a lot because of that. And but even then, before that, just like throughout the 90s, I played everything. As long as there was people playing it, and there's people that are willing to play it, I played it, and it was just fun to play. And then during the Dark Ages, we go to Cigar Bob's house a lot. Wherever he was living, he was always living in different places, and we'd all go to his house, and he had his home built cabinets, and we just swap out games. Like for a couple hours, we're going to play this, and then a couple hours, we're going to play that, and we just go through like a playlist of games, and everybody would play. There's only like a couple people that would only play like one game, but otherwise, most people that are in the scene played anywhere from 2 to 5 games.
I feel like that also is like a function of how long you've been in the scene too, right? Like if I like,
but even when new people, ask Rock. Like Rock, when he first came in, he was playing everything with us.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Huh. Because nowadays it's more like, I guess Haz's house was pretty similar as far as like having just a bunch of different games available to play at all times. Yeah. But even then though, like we had people that would, like Benny, like you were there for 4, right? And I was there for Marvel. Mm-hmm. And there were anime people there who specifically wanted to play Blaze Blue, right? Or Persona 4 at that time.
Cross Tekken, yep.
Yeah, but there wasn't as much cross pollination as I saw with some of the smaller scenes.
And it was because there was enough people to hold down those games. Pretty much.
That's true.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. There was a big C for Street Fighter, big C for Marvel, and it wasn't necessary if you didn't need to. Yeah. We felt we had to. We had to. We wanted to play these games. We wanted to get good at them, and we all had to support each other.
Sure. I was talking to one of the Hawaii guys and kind of remarking about this difference, that the fact that they play everything. And he mentioned to me that some of the hardcore players that I knew from my first trip 10 years ago had stopped coming out to play specifically because they only wanted to focus on one specific game.
Yeah.
And they didn't, when the rest of the scene moved on, they just stopped playing with the scene.
No.
And
here's the thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I'm curious about when, now that in the age of online, it seems like both styles can be covered now, where you still get the offline gatherings where everybody's kind of just hanging out and playing a bunch of different games. And then if somebody really wants to be sweaty and focus on one specific game, they can stay home and play it online now.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing too, is that, just because of online and YouTube and social media, everyone getting good so fast, it also makes it harder to play more than one game.
That's true.
Because it's so hard to spread yourself thin, because the skill the skill field is so wide now.
Yeah.
Everything's it's so tight now. It's really hard to keep up. You feel like, all right, I'm gonna go play this game for a couple weeks to learn it, but then while you're learning that, you're not putting time in. See, like Street Fighter 5, and in those couple weeks you're not playing it, you're falling behind.
Yep.
Yeah.
You fall behind really fast. Back then, the skill, the rise in skill was much slower, so you're able to just play everything a lot. It was a lot easier to do. It's a lot harder now, even with online, where I could I could spend all day playing this one game online. I could spend tomorrow playing this game online. But it's still like the back of your mind is like, man, but I really need to play this game. I need to keep up with it. There's a tournament coming up in like a week or two.
Yeah.
And so I have to cut off this game. And every time you move to another game, it's like, should I really be playing this right now?
Yeah, like you feel guilty, right?
Yeah, you're like, oh man, I feel like my skill's gonna slip.
That happened to me this Evo, actually. It was my last Street Fighter V Evo, but I happened to learn Cross Tekken a couple of months before, and I just was really addicted to playing that game and learning it, and then feeling awful every time I did, because I'm like, I should be playing a 5 right now. I should be playing 5.
And then your 5 game probably suffered a little bit because of it.
Yeah.
And then if you want to take it down to the next step, and this is where I fall into this problem, is that I don't want to play any other characters, because anytime I start messing with another character, that's taking into my time for learning my main.
Yep, it's a whole other chapter, and
I understand. I understand having another character to cover like bad matchups. So it's worth it. But if in your case, you play 6, you play Chun, right? We think she's like super good. Why would you ever waste your time playing another character? You're just eating up time. I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess the counter argument could be, I play those characters so I can learn them and figure out how to beat them. I get all that.
That's where I usually go, or alternatively, like, hey, I'm hedging my bets in the age of patch culture, where like the top tier could change at any minute, so I need to be able to have a launching point if I have to abandon ship on my character, which has happened.
Yeah.
I happen to pick broken characters sometimes, and they nerf the shit out of them. Not Zero, though. I found Zero's good.
Zero's never broke. Never fair. He's never fair. He's never bad.
Yep.
He's 3 for 3 right now. 3 games? Yeah, 3 games, right?
TVC,
yeah,
MVC3, and MVCI. He's good in every single one.
Oh, no, and SVC Chaos. He's good in there, too.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. Even SNK couldn't figure him out.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard now. It's so easy to spread yourself thin.
There's a scene in northern Arizona. I think they're in Payson, if I recall correctly. It's called like Campfire Gaming or something. And
Payson or Prescott?
It's one of them. It's Prescott.
Prescott.
My bad.
It's Prescott.
Yeah, and they, they don't have the same scene that we have in Phoenix or Tucson, which I'll lament that Phoenix or Tucson are small scenes, but in reality, like, everything's relative. And Prescott, I think, is even smaller, where it's just like 5 or 6 folks.
And there's nothing else near them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yuma's the same scene, same size as far as Street Fighter scene goes, and like they have to kind of be multi-game specialists at times, or alternatively, if the scene has to decide that they're going to focus on one specific game, which that's hard. That can't be a democracy thing. Yeah.
That's tough, dude. It's tough. I can't even imagine, dude.
Oftentimes it's because you're leading by example and you're being like, check out this game, it's cool, kind of like the Honolulu scene, and like everyone's like wants to try Marvel right now, but they may not stick with it. They may go to another game when the next game comes out and looks cool, or a retro game gets revived. Like what is it? Sam Show is getting rollback this weekend, I think.
Yeah, it's actually live right now. The beta is live right now.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I heard it's on sale, so I might pick that up too.
Yeah, it's like $20 for everything. I literally looked at it this morning because I wanted to get it, and it was full price this morning. And then
Huh.
Marvin posts up on IRC and say, "Hey, it's $20 for everything in the DLC." I'm like, this wasn't there this morning. They just put it up on sale. I'm like, oh well, I guess I'm grabbing that.
Nice.
You said he posted on IRC.
Did I say no, Twitter? Oh my god!
I mean, we did draw that parallel basically today, seeing like how similar it was, because like that was another like topic I wanted to cover on the show, is how similar networking between scenes is. And Benny, you brought up that earlier about like SRK being the main communication for a lot of our generation. How did you stay in touch with the Alaska scene?
With the Alaska scene, pretty much right now it's just through Facebook. Like I'm not really involved in terms of like watching a lot of the stuff that they do, but I see like the events and stuff. But kind of like when I started out, we kind of touched on this last episode with Abe, was in terms of like I didn't understand kind of like the scope and the breadth of the scene at the time, right? Like here I was playing Street Fighter 4 on my 360 with a pad, just playing online,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking like I'm the only person in Anchorage that's playing this game and the only person in Alaska, right? Nobody's playing Street Fighter 4, right? Hear that radio advertisement, go out to the local tournament, do well there. And then I meet all these people and I'm just like, oh, there's like a community here. There's like, it was a good, I don't know, 20 people or so, 20, 30 people. And then, we started doing Ranbats and stuff like that, start getting to know people. They start talking about how they've gone to Evo. I start learning about what Evo is and all this stuff. I'm just like, there's like all these communities, learn about SoCal and all those guys, the New York guys, start getting, putting names to faces and stuff like that. And then things kind of just like clicked for me because I was like, I remembered looking at those names in like magazines back in the day and like seeing event results and just thinking, oh, that's cool. Like they do tournaments and stuff, but like I didn't know who those people were. Like I wasn't really into like the fighting games as I was at that time as a kid. So I was just like, I'd look at those and just kind of just browse through them, skim through them and whatever. And then like
Tips
it
and
kind of just like,
tricks.
yeah, everything kind of like flashed back. And I was just like, oh, I remember seeing Jeff's name. I remember seeing Alex Faye and Justin Wong and Flo and seeing Mike Watson's name in these magazines I used to look at. And I'm just like, man, this is all like coming full circle to me. And it's
Tips and
just like,
tricks was amazing for that. Oh my god,
yeah, yeah,
it
just
was
seeing like
amazing.
all the results. And then like, it's funny you talk about like that smaller Honolulu scene playing a bunch of like bunch of games at the same time, right? Or just a hodgepodge, like Scott said, because that's actually something that they do right now in Anchorage. Is
Oh,
they
okay.
have they call it Monday Night Combat, and basically they hold it at one of the like a couple of the figureheads there in the scene. They own a Thai spot, and then they own like a Froyo spot.
Oh,
It's owned
what?
by
What?
yeah,
That's
and they're
cool.
and they're like in
Froyo
the
in
same.
Alaska. All right.
Yeah, and they're next to, they're actually like right next to each other, and it's a family-owned business, and they usually host their events at the Froyo spot. So
Okay.
yeah, they do the Monday Night Combat thing, and like it's a mixture of like Smash and like Tekken 7, I think, or whatever, whatever the big game is, and then they'll rotate something else in there too. Like, hey, what do you guys want to play this week? So it's like they're always playing something else, and it goes back to what you said, like about the smaller scenes, right? Like they have to, everybody doesn't want to just be like, okay, we're just going to play Street Fighter 5, and then maybe you alienate like half the scene, right? Because they don't want to play that anymore.
Sounds
So it's like
familiar. Yeah.
they've got this kind of like, yeah, they got this like rotating tournament going on every Monday, like whenever they can do it. And yeah, they bring in other games. Like I was just looking at a recent one. It's Smash Brothers, Melee, Tekken 7, and Strive.
Okay.
And then
Good
other
spread.
weeks, like it'll be different games.
Okay. I wonder if it's like kind of like how Arizona is, where different scenes will come out for different tournaments, or if it is kind of like a true melting pot where everybody just happens to play every game, that no matter like whatever the game of the week is, you know.
Yeah, well, there's a few players like some of my best friends are like, yeah, they play everything. So it's just like if you're playing it, sure, like I have a base in this game and I'll play it. How much, how well I'll do, like who knows, but yeah, there's definitely some guys that will pretty much just like, oh, you guys are gonna play this? Like, yeah, I can play that too.
Okay. And that's always fun to like encourage this discussion, because you end up comparing the games with each other too, and being like, this game's trash or this game's awesome, and I didn't know you could even do. Like that's kind of like what we're doing even on this call, where like Scott will just drop this random gem about this old game, and I'll be like, "Oh wait, that sounds utterly ridiculous," and he's like, "Yes, it is."
Yeah, and see, and then the other thing you talk about like the East Coast and people being close, right? Like, like there's people don't realize like how big Alaska is, right? So I was in Anchorage, which is like basically like South Central, and then Fairbanks is like Central Alaska. That's 7 hours north, and then
Holy crap!
I don't know how big
Jeez.
their scene is. Like I think there's a few people that play
7
there.
hours north in heavy snow where you're driving like 12 miles per hour.
And then like if you picture Alaska, right? There's the whole like panhandle area that borders like Canada and then goes down to Seattle and Washington and stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's a scene over there in the capital in Juneau, kind of in that area. And there's a good, I want to say, I don't know how big their scene is. I want to say maybe 10 people, but they're a pretty close knit group because they're all in that same area. And they're another scene like there's not really any kind of like traveling between the two scenes. But when
so
they
they
go
have
to
like a
Evo,
Phoenix Tucson rivalry.
yeah. So, well, not really that. It's more. I think it's more collaborative. Like they definitely want to play each other. Like whenever they can meet up, and usually that's at
Okay.
Evo. So it's like everybody. That was like the one thing. That's why that was such a big thing for me. It was when I moved here. It was like I get to go to. I'm going to Evo, but it was more like I get to see my friends from all over there because I became friends with some of those guys from the Juneau and the Panhandle area. Like I had never met them, and when I went to Evo in 2011, it was just like, oh, this guy and his group of friends here. These are the guys from the Juneau area, and like then I would see them like every year, and I'm just like, oh yeah, hey, what's up, guys? And then you know, Anchorage kind of being or Alaska just kind of being the small state that is, well, in terms of population, is just like find out that they're like friends with or they know like my wife's cousins and stuff. And they were like, it was funny like looking on Facebook and like somebody commenting, and they're just like, wait, how do you know so and so? And it's like, oh, I know him from Street Fighter, and I met him in Evo, and blah blah blah. And just like, oh,
and that's the thing. That's the thing. That's what's cool about what you get into all these scenes, and then you all come together eventually at like Evo or something, and then you start learning of mutual people.
Yeah.
I had that all the time where people run up to me. It's like, yeah, it's like I know I'm from the North Carolina scene. It's like I know all these guys that you played with, and I was like, oh, sick, And I always think it's cool because they never tell me stories and all that. And then I want to see I want to see how good they are.
Yeah.
I want to see how my guys trained them, right? Like my crew trained him, and stuff like that. And it's always so cool, like when you go to a major and then you meet up with your old scenes and stuff. Yeah. And it's such a cool feeling.
It's like a class reunion, but at the same time, it's like, hey, I wanna see like what you've been studying since we last talked.
I want to see how your scene is now. I haven't been there for years. I want to see how you guys are now. And because I want to see, because like you guys used to beat me up back then, but I want to see now if I can kick you guys' ass.
Yeah, you think about it, it's almost like the martial arts movies, right? Like the competing dojos from different regions, and you're just like, oh, hey, I just met you over here, or I haven't seen you in 5 years, and then like they have a little sparring session. It's like, oh man, you've learned a lot since the last time.
It's like it's like that story that Abe told you guys, where I used to kick their asses, and then they came up for one devastation, and they whooped my ass. It was like that, right? It was probably them that like, oh, hey, we're meeting up again at this big tournament. We want to see how we square up against you this time. Yeah. And whoa, man, they whooped my ass. It was Abe,
major tournaments too.
It was Abe, Matt, and Ernest's brother Carlos. Man, they just whooped my ass, dude. I was like, oh. But it's so cool though when you finally get to meet up again and you see like a huge jump in skill. It's so cool.
Yeah, I forget my point. It's something super special because I remember now. It's that at those big major tournaments too, you only have it's only like once a year, right? So you're like, I have to show the best that I can right now because otherwise I'm not going to get this chance for another year or the next time I go visit those guys.
Because it's like, I mean, I think the most recent one, I want to say, what was the first year Street Fighter 5 was 2016?
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah, so after I had left, that's 4 years after. And I would look into the Facebook group and stuff like that. I'd hear about like who their top players were now, and like you leave and it's like you kind of get this kind of legendary status, like, oh, Benny's this, right? And like I remember leading up to that Evo, one of their top guys, we were gonna meet up because we had like shirts and stuff made, and we were the ones distributing them. But what was his name? Zach. He played like Ken, and I remember kind of like I played like Mocha's Ken and stuff like that in our local scene, and they were just like, yeah, when you guys meet up, I'm like, I want to get a set with you. And like he ended up beating me, but it was just like kind of that whole like meeting up phase. It was just like I don't even know who this guy was. I met him for the first time, but then we have that connection already because he's friends, like you said, like the mutual friends. He's friends with my old friends, and it's just like, hey, now
We're
I
up.
want to see what you're all about, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. That's how I got in touch with Hawaii for this most recent trip. Was like, most of the Marvel scene that I played with 10 years ago wasn't there anymore, but there was one gentleman who wasn't even a Marvel specialist. He's a Street Fighter specialist, but he happened to play, and we spoke a couple words to each other back then, but then we got to know each other really well 10 years later because of that one like faint thread of former relationship back then, just being like, hey, we happen to know each other a little bit. And then there were a couple of people in the Hawaii scene that remembered me from 10 years ago that they like. There was one gentleman who he had like a body transformation where he basically lost a ton of weight, and he like got really really healthy, so he looked completely different and I didn't recognize him. But like I just reuniting with those people after this long, and then basically just on chance meetings, really. And then it's that networking like web effect when you go to a major and you're like, okay, I'm going to meet this person who's going to introduce me to this person who's introduced me to this person. Like, and sometimes it's through people that like I got into Hawaii as well due to Ray, who happens to know you, Scott. I think either you or Jeff, one of the two. And then so like we hit it off and online, and then that's how I got invited to that potluck. So when we say like it's networking and stuff, it's like to the point where like with James, the guy Leviathan, the guy who came and picked me up, drove through like several hours of traffic to come pick my ass up and take me to that party.
Yeah.
Like you just end up doing a lot of things for out of state people because you're like, you're bonding over this common love of fighting games.
Oh yeah, for
Well,
sure, man.
not only that, you get to meet you meet all these people. They're all over the place. So then you have whenever you go on vacation anywhere, you know
Yeah.
who to run into. You know
That's
who to
true.
call.
Yep.
Hey, you want to go play some games? Or like, hey, what's some good spots around here I can go eat or whatever. Now you have like all these connections all around. Like
Yep.
like me, I could say I got all my buddies that live in Korea, Japan, in Europe, South America, most of the states. I could just go and I know people because of this, right?
Yeah.
The networking is so vast. I can go to any state. I can hit somebody up for whatever, whether it's playing games or anything, right?
Yeah. I mean,
That's so awesome. It's so great. And like people are like, how do you know people in all these places? Like, that's what I do here.
I mean, yeah.
My wife tells me that. My wife was wondering that when she first met me. She's like, how do you know these people?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the whole community aspect, right? And then like the thing with having mutual friends, it's like it's a it's word of mouth, right? It's somebody vouching for you. Like, oh, I know so and so here, and it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, let me reach out to them. And typically it's just like, hey, I'm coming over to San Diego, and what's his name? What's the guy's name? Ryan. I think he's one of the guys over here. He's like,
Yeah.
and it's just like, oh yeah, you're good friends with my friend John, and like he told me to hit you up if I was looking for games or like places to eat or something like that, right? Like that's just like something to just start out with a great icebreaker, those kind of things.
Ryan is
And then,
tight. He's an awesome dude.
yeah, like and then like you bringing up the San Diego scene, like it made me think about the whole one thing that like the Alaska guys always try to do at Evo was to always um find try to do like a team battle against some other region.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I got my taste of that when I went in 2011 against the Utah scene. That was like one of the best memories ever. And then like every time that I've been there, like they always try to match up against another scene. Like I don't know who's the one in charge of like doing all the communication amongst each other, but those scenes are the SoCal scene, NorCal scene, those kind of people. Like they're real prideful, and they're boastful in the sense that they feel like they could beat anybody, right? So it's just like nothing against my friends in Alaska, but it's just like they're fighting an uphill battle, right? Fighting against these bigger scenes and these known players and stuff. And like there's I remember we played like the NorCal team one time. I want to say it's funny because like I looked at these players later on, like as they like progressed in 4 and in 5 even, and like we played a team that I think Julio was on at one point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
From
and then I was like,
California.
at the time I didn't know who that was, and then like when I see him kind of rise through the ranks, and I'm just like, oh, that's that guy that we played, a few years ago, and that's always something that they always tried to do every time they went to Evo, or I think even when they go to like Northwest Majors or any kind of events like that, they try to network with somebody there and just say, hey, you guys want to do a team battle, and like you said, test your mettle against that group and see how they fare against them.
And at the bare minimum, I think the rule should always be whenever there's a visitor, that visitor needs to run a gauntlet.
Yeah, Kumite.
Yeah. You got to run a gauntlet through all of our best players, like our top 10 or whatever. You got to do it. You have to, right? I think that's I think that's only fair. Like anytime someone comes in, they're new or whatever, or they're rarely ever here. Like, all right, here we go. You're going to run through all of our players. It's like when Tucson will come up, or like when we go to Tucson, right? They're not going to play each other. They're only going to play us.
Yeah,
because they play each other all the time. Same thing, right? But it's like, like I think bare minimum, like if it's just you and one other people, you need to go through the gauntlet of the players of where you're going. I think that should be. I think it's fun.
And then being on the visitor side is awesome too, because at that point, from your perspective, the red carpet's being rolled out to you. You just get to be on a station and play as many games as you wanted, which is why you're there in the first place. So everybody fucking wins. Yeah.
Yes, dude. Yes, absolutely, dude. I think that should be a mandatory rule.
Yeah. I don't know. I never thought about that for visitors. Like that was always something that we did for like people that were leaving. Like I remember even like when I left, they were just like, "Hey, we're gonna run a gauntlet or whatever," and everybody was just like playing me in like Street Fighter 4 before I left, that kind of thing.
Oh,
yeah, because we did that for Mike.
It works for them too, because now they're getting, even though you're only one person, that's a new style that they get to try out against.
Yeah,
maybe a style that none of their players have.
Even if you happen to play a character that they already, or they're playing a character that you already have in your scene, just having a different take on it is pretty important. I think they'll be able to like teach you to adapt to things that the other person wouldn't be, even if your local wouldn't be able to.
Even if you're not the better player, you might have one or two things in your pocket that they've never seen before that might elevate even more.
Yep.
Even if you're not the better player.
Yep.
Like, oh, wait, it's like I might be kicking this dude's ass like 10-0, but man, he's doing this cool thing that I could probably use, to elevate my game, and vice versa,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of networking, I threw this idea out last week when we were talking with Abe. But I have this theory that like the best players that come out of Arizona and out of these smaller scenes are the players that play really wacky characters. And that is not like a slight against anybody for playing whatever character they want to play, but it's a pattern that I've noticed where you'll have whatever game is popular at the time, you'll have like a character specialist, and then what ends up happening is they go out and they beat a bunch of people because that character is really rare. And then with enough spotlight on you, everybody wants to start getting practice with that character so that way they know the matchup, because the matchup is suddenly relevant now because you've kind of put that character on the map. And I look at like, and then what happens then is, say, because the local narrative, it can end up easily being, well, that you're winning because of this character, because nobody knows how to fight this character, blah, blah. People can write that off, right? But the reality of that is, yeah, but what do you do with that afterwards, where now that these top players want to network with you and learn the matchup, are you going to rise to the occasion and compete with these top players, or are they just going to bulldoze you until they know all the information and then leave you
it's like
they
have to figure you out, and then all of a sudden you're left to lose.
You have to you have to pick up the pieces, right?
You now have to rise with them.
Right. And then so some of our best players coming out of Arizona, in my opinion, are those people like yourself, Scott, or Armando with Shumagaroth, or Latif with Viper, or Nico with Mr. S. Oh, sorry. Nico with Honda, and Juicebox with Abel. Those are my main examples of like people who play weird characters. Or like Jixel and Jam, right? Like I don't know anybody else who plays Jam at that high level. Or Tubazo and his Arakune. Or his whack ass Marvel team.
Well, Arakune is just because no one wanted to play him because he was so busted.
Okay, that's fair too.
Yeah, that character plays a different game. That character plays a different game. With those curses. I know
again,
that.
I'm not trying to say that like
But-
playing that character is a shortcut to getting top tier networking, but what I am saying is that it kind of shifts the pressure to later on in your fighting game career, where you have to determine whether or not you're just a gimmick or you're going to grow past that and backfill anything that your character might have helped you with in the past. And I think all of our successful players coming out of Arizona have done that. But the kicker is that if you were playing not a wacky character, like a more of a top tier standard character, if I was in California, exactly in California, I'm just going to grab the people that are playing the top tier in my state. Why would I reach out to Arizona of all places? So you just don't get the best competition unless you play like a really weird character. And I noticed that a lot when playing Chun-Li in the Street Fighter 6 beta, because that character is really rare right now.
It got you a lot of clout.
Yeah. Also, beating up on Vesper for 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like you bringing that up. It reminds me of like me playing Sim, right? Like in Street Fighter 5. Like I was pretty much the only one playing Sim in our scene, and then Akita shows up, and starts washing people, and everybody's just like, "What the hell? How do I deal with this?" Because I wasn't doing. I don't play anything like him. Like he's a very runaway kind of player, teleports all over the place. Like it's frustrating to watch and frustrating, I know, for people to play against. Even the mirror match, and it's just like I remember people after that started happening, they'd be like, I need to get some matches with you. I need to learn how to deal with this, because there was nobody else in the scene that was playing him besides me and him. And now all of a sudden there was this spotlight on me, and just like, hey, I need to play you so I can figure out how to deal with a lot of this crap.
Akita is another good example of a player that played a non-standard character, but ended up getting national renown. Like, I'm not sure how much I'm outing right now, but there's like a whole Dawson like core group in our country, and they call themselves the Simquisition.
I'm not even in there.
There's a bunch of like Archeros. Like, I don't know. There's a bunch of like Dawson players that I think are in it.
It's always been like that with Sim, though. Sim's never been popular in any game. It's almost like it's just never been a popular character, even though he's usually pretty consistently strong.
Yeah,
overall.
He's just really weird to play, or different than all the other
because
characters.
It's unorthodox. Yeah.
It's because he's that archetype that doesn't. You can't play your game.
Sure.
Versus Sim.
Yeah. And then it doesn't necessarily translate between characters either. Like if I play Ryu, I can kind of play Ken, like as long as I know like the basic combos and stuff, like
you can
setups
play your
and stuff
game.
like that.
You can play your game.
But I can't be like, okay, let me go from Ryu and like, okay, now I'm gonna go.
You have to approach that completely different.
Yeah. It's a specialty matchup, like a grappler or something, right?
Yeah. But to your point, John, like I remember that firsthand, because like when I was really getting heavy in Alpha 3, first character I learned was Vyakuma. Straight to the top. Right?
Top tier.
Straight to the top. Right? Because I got into the game late, right? I didn't get into the game until 2 years after it came out. Right? I had to come here back to Arizona for emergency leave. And this is when the North Carolina guys were kicking my ass. I was still getting my feet wet with the game. And Dan Amici and Cigar Bob gave me a crash course, 2-week crash course. I was like, who's broken? Vyakuma. All right, cool. Teach me the stuff. And then after a few weeks, I was starting to beat them all the time. And then I went back to North Carolina. I was whooping their butts. And I was like, man, this character's broken. But and then I would travel, and I wasn't the best or anything. I was losing to other Vyakumas and I was just like another random. But then all of a sudden, I stopped using them.
Okay.
I went to V Cody. No one was using Cody. I think this is at the time where I'm like, man, I kind of want to be a little more unique. I think that's just how I wanted it. And it wasn't for no real reason other than I found it fun to explore someone unique that no one really touches. And Boss actually kind of inspired me to play Cody. He didn't really use him, but I watched him play Cody a little bit at B5, and he was just messing with him. I'm like, oh, he dodges and this. And I'm like, oh, he's kind of cool. And no one uses him. And sure enough, I got really good with him. This is at the time when no one knew how to crouch cancel yet, and I was figuring that stuff out. I was one of the only Americans doing it, and that made a huge. That gave me a lot of clout for that game.
Okay.
I really felt that. I really felt that with Via Cuba. I was good. I could beat a lot of players, but I didn't stand out. But then I'm doing Cody. Who's this character? What's up with these freaking infinites? Like I can't beat this guy. I can't hit this guy, right? And then what's up with this corner pressure stuff they haven't seen before? It just gets a lot more notice. You know?
Yeah. And then all the best players want to play you, and then you just get better by osmosis, right?
And then eventually they pass you up because Cody's not that great.
But even then, at that point you've taken your Cody's been kind of pressed in the diamonds, right? Because you're like, if I'm playing the best of the best, this is the limit of the character, as opposed to I just have to be running on gimmicks, right?
Yeah, right. Because before I could just run over even the best players, but once they learn it, now we can figure out how far this character can really go.
Yeah.
But yeah, then you have like Sakura and all that. Sakura wasn't very good at 4.
No, yeah.
No one knew it. I mean, dude, Daigo would not money match me at Evo.
Because he didn't know. Yeah, no console characters, right?
And this is obviously after we did the 5v5.
Yeah.
I think it was I don't know what room it was. I think it was the same room. Arturo was there. I remember he money matched him and beat him. But he wouldn't money match me just because wasn't familiar with it. Because they played arcade at the time. And I was like, that's kind of bummed. But yeah, there's I don't know, man. It's more interesting, right? It's more interesting when you find players that just play unique stuff. It's just more interesting.
Yeah. I found that it's like we like to think that the FGC is like a meritocracy in a lot of ways because it's an open bracket format. But I think a lot of times the best players are the ones who network the best because that's how they find the best practice. And you're not like, it's one thing to just be on the Evo floor playing on the casual setups they have and just playing random people, right? But it's another thing to be in a salty suite and getting sets with the best of the best. And even getting invited to the salty suites nowadays is a kind of it's a network thing more so than a meritocracy. So I think people frequently misrepresent the importance of knowing people to get better. You can't just sit and grind all the time. And I think that's the part where people, compare online and offline a lot. That is a part that we're missing right now, where you don't have that same that networking capability because ultimately, otherwise, your name is you're just a word on a Discord list, right? And you don't have that same connection with people, and so it's going to make it much harder, I think, to get sets in the future if you don't have a pre-existing relationship with them.
I don't know. Because you're right, but I feel like some people were able to rise up regardless.
Yeah,
some people can figure it out. Some people can figure it out without having anybody.
Do you think that you could be a Capcom Cup champion if you played online ranked only?
So look at my example. I mentioned it when you guys were streaming with Abe. I don't know if you caught it in the chat, but Tekken World Finals was this past weekend, and you have the guy from Bulgaria. He got 4th. The guy has no scene. He's got no one online locally to play. I don't know how close, like the closest players are to play online are. They're considered regional for him. They're playable, but for what it sounds like, not much. The guy has a family. He has 2 jobs, and the dude got 4th.
And that's not like even a double elimination tournament. That's a round robin, right? Where you're playing a lot.
You have to be, there's a group stage and everything like that, right? You're playing everybody. I mean, he took out legends. Yeah. He took out legends, and it was just because he grinded. He seeked all the knowledge he could, right? And I don't know. I was like, that's amazing to me.
Did he play a weird character in a weird way or anything like that?
I don't even know who he used. I need to watch the matches.
Yeah, I don't know who it was. I'm not trying to think of.
That's a good question. That is a good question, though. That is a real good question
It
because
might
that could
prove my
tie in.
theory, right?
Yeah, you could prove the theory. It could be playing a weird character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was playing Katarina. I don't know if I'm thinking of
What's
somebody
his
else.
name? What's his name? Gerlander or something like that. He
Okay.
got fourth.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's definitely always exceptions to the rule because, like, when I think of people that were like kind of strictly online warriors, like the one that always comes up to me in terms of like Street Fighter was like Wolfcrone. Like, I mean, yeah, he went to offline events, but it's just like I always like people were always talking about how he grinded online a lot. Like they'd see
Yeah,
him
it's
online all the time.
because from what I understand, most of the Detroit scene hated him,
Yeah. See, well, I mean, I
so he
mean,
had to grind online and travel.
victim of circumstance, but I mean, it's just like at the same time, like even if he put himself in that position, like that was what he had to do, right? And he
I
was
got another
still
example.
successful.
And I think he would agree. Sean, forward
Forward.
with Smash. When it comes to Smash,
Wait, he's not an
he
online warrior. He's just somebody. He lived the dream as far as like jumping from scene to scene to scene, right? And did the couch surfing thing.
but if I remember, if I'm not mistaken, he talked about he didn't really have much to practice with.
Yeah.
When it came to people around him,
not locally,
but he
right?
figured it out. Yeah, right, and he made it work.
That's
if
fair.
I'm not mistaken, I remember him saying something like that. Then you'll have to ask him one day when you have him on.
I think it'll get him to the point where he can go out of state and compete. I guess because then he just started going out and beating everybody out of state after a while too, right? Because he was
this is in the 2000s of all times.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But at the time, didn't he also play a weird character because no one knew anything about Falco yet?
I think he was already established.
I thought Sean was the one who established him too. We got to ask him next time he's on.
Well, because I figured because he's just like Fox, he's just like a little weaker Fox.
Yeah, or like a harder, slower, or harder hitting or something.
Yeah,
we're not
sure.
Smash
I'm not a
experts.
Smash guy. I'm not a Smash guy. I don't want to assume. I just know Falco is just a little weaker than Fox.
You mentioned like weird characters from small scenes. Like prime example for another one that I just completely washed over was my friend Neo, being from Anchorage in 2010, and he got 13th at Street Fighter 4 playing Jury.
Oh yeah,
there you go.
He got tied for 13th, and like that was like the catapult for me to even want to go to Evo was to like them going down there and watching his match, and then of all the scenes to take on, he beats that Vega player Tatsu, right?
Yeah,
it was a stream match, and like towards the end of the match, like he was getting so hype, he ended up like taunting mid match, and like that just I was in my room or something watching, and I was just like I was going crazy, and I was just like holy shit! I was like he's beating somebody from SoCal, right? And again, that's like you said, that's a kind of weird character, like relatively
very weird back then. Yeah, it was just like I and your friend really that I knew that played Jury.
Another example too is that like because it's cool because like you play these weird characters and it brings all this attention on you. Like I was always considered the leader of the scene for like the longest time because I was always the one that was networking with all the people across the FGC as a whole. Mm-hmm. I was the guy that was always doing that, right? And then the whole 5v5 thing happened or whatever. I mean, I was always known as a really strong player up until then, but then that happened because the scene was really growing at that time, and then people saw the soccer thing, and then all of a sudden, Vi did his Specialist 3 event, and we were the only scene that was not California invited.
Oh,
based solely off the performances I was doing at the time and what Juicebox was doing.
Okay. And the pre-existing relationship that you had with VIA too,
and because of the pre-existing relationships I've had with these people, got us a chance. It just because of that. And would that have mattered if I played Akuma or Sagat from in Vanilla? I don't think it would. It wouldn't have had the same impact.
You wouldn't have been on the wild card team if that's the case. They deliberately wanted to stack it with weird ass characters, right?
Yeah, that was the main reason. That was the main reason. It was like, wait, because I remember the canon was like, wait, you play Sakura, right? It's like, yeah, like you're not on your own team. I was like, no, I'm just a captain. And it's like, yeah, you need to go on that team. Yeah, it's like you're gonna go on that team. You're gonna go on that team. Use the Sakura. We want some variety. So yeah, and that's what people want to see. They don't want to see the same things.
Yeah,
they want to see variety, right? And that's just how it is. It's like those things are gonna stick. They're gonna stick out the most, right? I remember, like, I don't follow Smash, right? But I can't remember which Evo it was, but it was for Melee. Was it like 2012, 2013, or something like that? I don't know. And I remember watching the top 8, and we have one of our local guys in top 8, Tempo Axe, who plays Pikachu.
Right.
And he was in top 8, and he like zero stocked somebody. He didn't lose.
I was there.
One
Yeah,
stock.
I remember that. Yeah. Everyone lost their mind.
I lost my mind.
Yeah.
And he was already a pretty prominent player, but like, man, a lot more. I guarantee you, a lot more people knew who he was after that one. That was amazing, because in Smash you never see that. They usually always go down to the last stocks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Usually.
And this way, he just lit him up, made all the right reads over and over again, and that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in Smash, from what I've ever watched. And I know Pikachu's not that great of a character in that game.
Yeah.
And he's like one of the only like good ones, but like, you notice that stuff, right? You just notice it.
You don't even have to play like a shit character either. Like Wobbles is from Arizona as well, the Ice Climbers player that they named the Ice Climber Infinite afterward.
And at the time, Wobbles was considered a terrible character. It was only the Infinite. I guess now Ice Climbers is pretty decent now.
I guess.
I was watching a Hungrybots video the other day. He tiered everything, and I guess Ice Climbers have like really climbed up.
Okay.
No pun intended.
But they were still rare, right? And then
it's very
Arizona
rare.
guy again.
Very rare.
and again, I think also with Hungrybox, no one was using Jigglypuff.
Right. Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, look, Jigglypuff's top tier.
And like the interesting thing about a lot of these players is like their name important named players, but they also have gone back and backfill and play top tier at times. Like I know Axe has a Sheik, and I know that like MenRD is my good example from the professional Street Fighter V scene, where he got known for playing Birdie, but now he plays Frog, he plays Luke. Yeah.
Luke, he plays everything. Oh, I got 2 good examples for you guys. GamerB
Adon.
Oh,
everyone thought Adon sucked. Everyone thought Adon was no good, right?
Yeah.
And then Shen with Gen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shen with a Buki in 5 as well. He and Fujimura.
But we all thought she was good. There was a lot of Ibukis, man. I don't know if
in 5 in season 2.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I thought it was just Shen and Fujimura, and then me, because I saw it in advance. Maybe that's what you guys all think.
But when comparison to 4, you never saw another Gen player. You saw Jibbo, but he didn't play for too long. And then what was the other original Gen player?
There's a guy from like SoCal, Yeb.
Yeb. Okay.
Yeb, right?
I always got Yeb and Jibbo confused, because there's B's in both.
And you went nuts for those guys, right? Because you never see Gen. And then Shem just like took it to another level, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's way more exciting than watching like Infiltration with Akuma. It's way more exciting. Or like when Infiltration did use Hakan, right? That was exciting.
Yeah, Infiltration figured out that formula too, and then he started like he's known for his Jury in 5, which also she's a rare character then too. Jury, by the way, everybody fucking loves that character. Nobody plays that character.
You know what? It's funny. It's the same thing. When they announced Mika for Street Fighter V, everyone's going nuts. It's like, you fools, no one played her in Alpha 3. She was the worst character in the game. None of y'all played her. Stop the cat.
Yeah.
For real. But I don't know, man. There's just something about playing obscure characters, because it gives you all the creativity.
Yeah.
Because no one has anything discovered, you get to discover it all.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to you don't have I'm trying to think of the word, but you don't have to worry about playing a certain style because everyone else is playing it, and you can just figure it out on your. I can't think of the word, and I don't know. There's just something about it. I just love doing that, man. And then like even with Cross Tech, I use Paul. Paul sucks, but I make him work.
Yeah,
I played everybody, and everybody struggles against him.
The way I see it balance out, and it's not always a perfect balance, but like, your character has limits when you play low tier, but those limits can be offset by matchup unfamiliarity. So in the same way that you lose, like you have a disadvantage out of the gates by playing a shittier character, you also get an advantage out of the gates by playing a weird character, and they can balance themselves out. I think that's where like a lot of like the high A tier characters end up lying. Is there like there's some specialty matchup stuff here. Oh, unless you're like Sim, but like there's like some specialty matchup stuff here, and so you can ride that for a little bit until you run into that one counter matchup in bracket that just completely destroys you.
And then also the other thing is like I don't know, man. Like I'm also not a player that could just run to it. I'm not like Abe where I could just jump on a top tier and or Dan Mitsu where I just jump on a top tier and it works. I can't do that. I have to like the character a lot to do that. And that's why I don't play characters like Yan. I don't play Chun. I don't, I have to be really into the character. They're not fun for me.
You know, it's
I don't
really
find
fun,
them interesting.
What's it's really fun? Winning.
It is.
To quote Abe.
But you want to know it's also really fun winning with obscure characters.
Because then all the top tier players from California reach out to you, and you end up getting better that way, right?
and then you're like, man, and then you get to watch the whole scene using all the tech that you discovered, and not get credit for it.
Like all the Sakura resets? Is that what you're thinking
of? No. There was stuff like before that, before I was as well known.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I'm sure if I brought up certain things, certain scenes would be like, "That's bullcrap. You didn't discover that." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah, especially in the
can't prove it, but I can't prove it these days because
too long ago.
Well, it's just like no video. It's all hearsay and all that.
It's also the age of Twitter where things can just it's really easy to just have coincidences happen where two people discover the same thing. And it's easy to share and it can go viral and stuff like that. And it's an arms race. Like I think when any new game comes out, whether it's Tekken 8 or Street Fighter 6, right? Like that the Twitter clips are just going to go crazy, right? Like out of the gates
they want to find the stuff. They want to find the sauce. They want to be the guy that finds the sauce.
Whoever has the highest damage, everything.
But it's fun. It's so fun trying to do that. You want to be the guy that finds like all the cool stuff, right? Yeah. Because you want to kind of want to, even if you're not the person that can win tournaments, you want to have some type of worth to the scene, and you want to be validated in some way. You want to bring some type of value.
Yeah. Right. You think of somebody like Havitz, like he's not
Javits.
He's always doing the freaking tech.
He's not like a top player that's gonna like you're gonna see him in top 8s and all that stuff. He's a competent player, but his ability to find stuff is amazing.
Yeah, and then he's the guy that gets invited to the Street Fighter 6 demo that Long Island Joe did a while back, right? Like so. Networking is big.
Networking is huge, man. Networking is huge. I mean, obviously they're all friends, but but that helps out a lot, man. It's just another way to inject yourself into the scene.
Yeah.
It's like I'm gonna be the guy, even if you're gonna be like, I'm gonna be the low tier hero. You may not be the one winning, but people are gonna have eyes on you, and that allows you to get in certain circles when you go to these big tournaments, because everyone's going to want to play. Like, man, that guy's got a really nasty Dan. Dan sucks, but I want to play that.
Yeah.
I want to play against that Dan, or whatever.
Like on the footage it's playing on our stream right now, like I'm playing Chun-Li in season 1, and I just saw myself do air legs like 20 times. And, for Street Fighter 5, by and large, I played top tier only and broken tier in this case with Chun, and I didn't really accrue any notoriety for that game until like maybe later at the end of it, where I went back to Chun-Li when she was more rare and nobody really played her that much. Also, say hi to my cat. My cat's in the view too. Hi, Stella. All right.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to get notoriety when you're using a common character. You have to you have to have one or two things, or both. One, you better have some really sick tech, like you're pulling off like some really strict combo that you only see in combo videos, and do it in live matches. Just something that's like so sick. Or you just have to be really good, and you constantly take out killers.
Yep.
Right. And you got to do it on stream so people can see it.
Yeah,
right?
and if you're playing top tier, you're guaranteed those killers that you're trying to slay. Like they already know that matchup, so you have like
So
a
you
way
have to
harder.
yeah, you have to be good. So there's no doubt usually in most people's mind if you're good or not. They're like, oh, if you keep beating these guys, okay, we know you're good. Whereas it feels like me and I'm playing some random character that no one plays and I'm beating all these killers, you could be like, well, that's a fluke. No one knows the matchup.
Right.
Now it's like I have to keep coming back and do it again and again and again. You know, it only worked. The trick only works once.
Yeah, you have
right?
to like go back and backfill any weaknesses that your character, your style has in order to deal with the top tier once they know how to fight you and exploit those same weaknesses, right?
Yeah, so like me, I have the easier route to get into it, into the circles, into the networking. But if I want to maintain that high level play, after my tricks have been exposed, then now I'm on your level, and it's actually a harder road for me now than it would be for you.
Yep.
Because I am playing a lesser character, unless the character does end up. I do discover things that do make the character turn out to be top tier, which does happen sometimes.
Yeah, that's the arms race that we're talking about. There's a group of people that want to be internet famous, but there's a couple of people that want to have something that's really strong that nobody knows about, and they want to be like and ride that advantage. I think. There's that you're shifting the pressure. Basically, you're shifting the pressure from the start of your fighting game career to closer to the end of it, where you can ride the wave by picking an unknown character where at lower skill levels where the tiers don't matter as much, and then once you hit the top skill levels, that's where it's kind of make or break, and you have to decide whether you want to keep going or not.
And sometimes playing those lower tier characters might be the character might be a perfect fit for you as a gateway into the game.
Yeah.
To work your way up to the higher tier characters, because that's how I worked. That's how I did it in Third Strike. I hated Third Strike. Accidentally picked Remy. Remy's one of the worst characters in the game, and Remy just clicked with me in that game. I tried that game so many times back in the day. I hated it. I couldn't figure it out. I accidentally picked that character, and I start getting results, and everything starts clicking. And then I moved to Oro, and then I moved to Ken. And there you go.
You basically figure out how to play the game first, and then you find you give the game time to like develop, and other people can figure out what's good and what's good in the meta, like what's strong in it. Like projectiles weren't strong in Third Strike, so it sucks that Remy was your first pick. But you now know that, and you can make an informed decision with your next character, right? You kind of bought some time.
Yeah, it's like I'm sure like players like Men RD, right?
Yeah, Men RD is a great example.
Birdie eventually just kind of went to crap, but he had built up so much knowledge and skill with that character that now he could move on to another character archetype or whatever.
Yeah.
And
that's not easy. Things. That's not easy to go from, hey, I'm a character specialist and now I'm just a top tier generalist. Like that's not an easy transition. Like you have to really, because again, if you go being the king of a small pond or something for a long time with a weird character, and then all of a sudden your tricks have been exposed on the national level, like it's on you to adapt, and that seems really hard. Armando is another good example where somebody that like I remember like he would just block with his face with Schumacher off assist, and we would all be like, this is such a fucking gimmick and stuff like that, and it actually we discredited him, and that to his detriment. It wasn't really cool. Over time, he just ended up getting more attention from a lot of the top players from outside of the scene and getting better that way, to the point where eventually he could beat me with any team that he wants, because he put in the time to get past that initial, like, hey, they figured Shuma out, what do I do next? And then he just kept getting better and better and better, and then went back and refined it.
I remember with Armando, if I remember right, I remember when he started doing really well nationally, but man, he still wasn't getting very much credit.
No,
from lots, because it was like, oh, Wolverine, it's just whatever. He plays Wolverine stupid, and like, oh, Shuma, it's just gimmicky. Yeah. It took a while. I think, from my perspective, at least, from what I see when I'm paying attention, it seemed like it took a while. The discourse, it took a while from like, okay, no, this guy's actually pretty good. He's consistently doing things. And then now he knows the game so damn well that he can just like use other characters now.
Yeah, and if he was an asshole, really well, or if like he was just not easy to network, or if he didn't put a lot of priority in that, then that could have been the end of his story. But he kept going and, you know, made good impressions and networked with a bunch of different people to the point where there were top Marvel players coming to us in Arizona to get games with us, and then our scene got better in the process, you know. And like in the same way that I mentioned, I got to know Hawaii because I happen to know Scott and I happen to know Haz 10 years ago. Like it all comes back to that same theme of like,
and yeah, it was just the same thing here. Like it was because of my networking, because I was cool with everybody, that allowed all of them to come here,
right?
and then that benefits our scene,
Yep.
right? They get to play all these other players, all these like players like Betty, like you said, like all these names that you see in Tips and Tricks magazine and all that stuff, and all of a sudden now they're here, they're in your backyard.
Yeah.
You know, it's freaking cool. You know, you got to use that. You got to leverage that little power you got, man.
Yeah. There was a tournament in Tucson for Arcade in a Box that when Arcade in a Box was closing, and it was called This Is It, and I got to play Combo Fiend that weekend.
Fiend,
yeah, he came out, and that was the year that Combo Fiend and Yipes both showed Doctor Strange off, like because everybody was like, Doctor Strange is a whack ass character.
Yeah, the loops,
right? And then they played Nova Spencer Strange, the Nemo team, and they just brought that to the States, and it blew up, and that became a meta team. And so sometimes it goes the opposite way, where it's like, here's that weird thing that nobody knows how to fight against, and it also just happens to be really fucking good. So it's an endgame team as well. I'm kind of hoping that Chun-Li in Street Fighter 6 turns out that way, so that way I don't run out of gimmicks.
See, you know what? And that's funny you mentioned that, because I think it's Street Fighter 6. That's my one beef I have, because like I talk about this, I'm like, man, and now I want to use Ken, but it's Ken.
It's boring, right? Yeah.
And then, no, Ken is really fun. It's just that Ken is kind of a meme now in Street Fighter, right? Oh, we already know what these Kens are going to do. They're just going to DP, 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 DP. Yeah. You know, and it's just like he's kind of got like a
notoriety. Yeah,
he's got like a bad notoriety from 4. Yeah, the flowchart Ken, and then it happens in 5 too. And I just like I know at the end of the day, I'm not going to be able to come with anything probably unique with him, because it's just like a common character,
right?
And I mean, but then again, I think like it's going to be hard to be unique regardless, just because of how fast information flows these days.
Also, how fast information changes. Like they do a yearly patch or a balance patch, like a bug fix or something like that, and you know suddenly everyone's tiers are flipped and everyone's trying new characters again, and you're doing that same race. You know?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think now, you know, going forward, my motivation, my motivation for playing 6 is going to be different. You know, that's why I'm just going to play Ken and not worry about that and just play.
Yeah, that's fair. You don't have to differentiate yourself.
I'm obviously in a different stage of my life. I really don't care what people think anymore and all that. There's enough people in our scenes that have the networking, you know, to make things happen. I mean, I still do, but not nearly as much. Not with the younger guys, but you know, we got people that can do that stuff. You know, now I just sit back and I just play and have fun now. And not worry about those things. You know?
And when you're seasoned enough, you don't have to shoot for notoriety all the time, right?
Cool. Not at all. Not at all.
Well, I feel like we could keep going for hours here, but we are getting close to time. Any big shout outs, Scott, that you'd like to make on your 4th episode, I think?
Is it? Oh man, we gotta do more. That's not enough. we're gonna have to we still gotta talk about online stuff.
Yes, we have to talk about X-Band next time.
Yeah, yeah, man. That's a rabbit hole right there. It's a fun one though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a fun one. But yeah, like just shout outs to everyone out here, man. I'm hoping, you know, when 6 comes out, hopefully, you know, offline can kind of still happen. Obviously, maybe not in the same vein as it used to, but at least every once in a while, hopefully, like places like, it was nice to go to like Contender Esports. That place is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Hopefully, those guys can stay afloat for us to have places to go.
Yeah,
you know,
agree.
TGZ still, you know, whenever they're doing their thing, and yeah, man, just shout outs to everybody trying to keep the scene alive, you know.
Yeah, I that's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down in a future episode too, is like, you know, what does I think we touched on it briefly.
What do we do to
last week.
sustain the scene?
Yeah, do we change the tone of it to be more teamwork based and rather than competitive based, kind of like some of these scenes that we were talking about today, you know? The ones that just kind of all played everything. Maybe that's what the future of offline looks like. I don't know. Sorry, that was kind of a teaser. Yeah,
the future's interesting, man. I can't wait till everything comes out, man, and then we can really gauge like where the scene goes from there. You know, when 6 comes out, when Tekken 8 comes out,
totally.
Grand Blue, everything will roll back. That's going to be the big thing, right?
Yep.
So.
And also a shout out for podcast news, by the way. This episode is pre-taped. It's going to be airing on Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day to everybody who celebrates that, who's listening right now.
Yeah, happy Valentine. I can't even talk. Happy Valentine's Day to my wife if she ever watches this.
Same here. Happy Valentine's Day, Jess.
Yeah, like appreciate her for always being able to put up with my hobby, you know. Which is always great, you know. She's always been supportive, so that's important.
Likewise. Jess has been critical and supporting my fighting game addiction over the past couple of years.
Same with you, Benny. Right?
Yeah.
We were all three of us are fortunate. All three of us are fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, very fortunate. Yeah, really supportive of the whole thing. And yeah, I mean that's a whole nother podcast episode right there that I was thinking of. So
yeah, absolutely. We can talk about that stuff too. But yeah, happy Valentine's Day, and appreciate your loved ones.
Yep. And
buy some roses, buy them a steak dinner. I don't know.
Yeah.
Wine and dine,
champagne, dude. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. We'll talk to y'all later. To those who have liked and subscribed, we greatly appreciate your patronage and listening to us. You can find us on twitch.tv at twitch.tv/Spiral Series, youtube.com/Spiral Series, and an Apple Podcast and Spotify under Absolute Guard. Our Twitter is absolute_guard. Hit us up if you have any feedback on show content or guests you want to see. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Hey, later, guys.
Yes.